Previously, Fang Yuan survived the beast tide and cut away the trap set by Jiao San. Now, he faces the clan's interrogation, claims the inheritance left behind by his parents, and refines a powerful new goo that will open the next path in the Flower Wine Traveler's legacy. Let us continue with Reverend Insanity, Episode 9. Internal Affairs Hall, Interrogation Room. Winter sunlight pierced through the only window in the roof and fell onto the ground. Tiny specks of dust floated within that column of light, each one made sharply visible. The column of sunlight covered a chair. Fang Yuan sat there bathing in the winter sun. Across from him, before a wall swallowed in darkness, a long table had been placed. Behind that table sat 3 clan elders. The interrogation had already dragged on for an entire hour. Fang Yuan, are you certain there are no errors in the statement you just gave? One of the clan elders asked. Yes. Fang Yuan lowered his eyelids and looked at the tips of his shoes. The sunlight fell across his pale face, making him look almost like a statue carved from white stone. He had already expected the situation before him. After all, the other 4 Gu masters in his team were all dead. He alone had survived. In reality, any Gu master would be questioned to a certain degree, so that the clan could gather battlefield information more conveniently. It was just that Fang Yuan had already been questioned for an entire hour. Clearly, someone behind the scenes was targeting him and deliberately making things difficult. This was completely understandable. As long as one was human, one would have social ties. Behind a single person might stand an entire chain of other people. Then tell us in detail once more what happened during the battle, the elder continued. Very well. I spent several days breaking through to rank 2. I had just returned to the mountain stronghold when I encountered Kai Shan's small team. After they discovered Jiao San's group, I returned to my own team. At that time, they were locked in battle with the Wild Boar King. Fang Yuan spoke in the same calm tone from beginning to end. He had deliberately exposed his rank 2 cultivation himself. Without a corresponding goo worm to conceal it, the aura of rank 2 could not be hidden. Now that all 4 members of 6 Snake's team were dead, the so-called process could naturally be made up however he wished. However, Fang Yuan only hit a few key details. Most of what he said had truly happened. This was already the 5th time Fang Yuan had repeated the account, and as the 3 elders listened, their brows tightened. They could not hear any flaw, but they understood one thing: what a fabricated lie feared most was being repeated many times. Once repeated enough times, flaws would naturally appear. Yet this had already been the 5th telling. Each time Fang Yuan's wording had differed slightly, but the contents had remained consistent. It should be true. The 3 elders glanced at one another, exchanging looks. But one of the elders was still not satisfied. Her daughter had been the healing Gu master in 6 Snake's team, the daughter she had always loved most. In the end, she had died miserably in the mouths of wolves. How could this elder not feel hatred? Now when she looked at Fang Yuan, her gaze was already filled with coldness. Fang Yuan, I ask you this. You used moonblades to cut the blade scale net. Why did you do that? The middle-aged female elder demanded loudly, because I panicked. I wanted to contribute, but instead I made the situation worse, Fang Yuan said. Then I ask you again. When you hid inside the wild boar's belly, did you deliberately make the female Gu master in your team suffer calamity in your place? The elder asked again. I do not know. At that time I was extremely frightened. In my panic, I wanted to hide inside the Wild Boar King's body. In the end, she also crawled inside and fought me for the position. She could not win it. The lightning wolves bit her and she died. I feel deeply ashamed, Fang Yuan answered. The middle-aged female elder clenched her teeth. Fang Yuan's answer was extremely slippery. He had only stated the facts. In truth, he still had not spoken of his own subjective intent at all. That left this elder, who had always wanted to suppress him, unable to seize any weakness. Naturally, she was furious in her heart, but there was nothing she could do. Under circumstances like these, Fang Yuan truly could not be convicted. 3 days had already passed since the beast tide. After the casualties were counted, the expressions of all the clan's higher-ups had turned ugly. The small beast tides in the past had caused losses as well, but they had never been this serious. The reason this time lay with the lightning wolf pack. In previous years, wolf packs like this would only appear after at least 3 small beast tides. In this world, the environment was harsh and survival was difficult for humanity to survive. Humans not only had to compete with other people over resources, but also fight against fierce wild beasts and bitter weather. And such struggles were often extremely brutal. This small beast tide was still only the prelude. What was truly terrifying was the massive wolf tide 1 year later. At that time, tens of thousands of lightning wolves would attack the mountain stronghold. And among them would be the terrifying Thunder Crown Head Wolf. Asterisk Thunder Crown Head Wolf. A reminder for those who have forgotten, these are the leading wolves in a lightning wolf pack. The name means a wolf wearing a crown of thunder. After unwillingly asking several more questions, the female elder was finally forced to give up under Fang Yuan's flawless answers. Then Fang Yuan, what are your plans next? Another elder asked, his words seeming to carry a deeper meaning. I plan to apply for the household separation mission, inherit the property left behind by my parents, and live properly, Fang Yuan said directly. There was no need to hide this matter, because Six Snake's team had almost been wiped out, with only Fang Yuan remaining. This also meant he did not even need to use his rank 2 Gu Master's right to skip a mission in order to accept the household separation mission. The elder who asked the question nodded, then shook his head. He said to Fang Yuan, you misunderstand my meaning. Aside from you, every member of your team has sacrificed their life. I suggest that you join another small team. The missions in the Internal Affairs Hall are all designed for small teams. They are very difficult for one person to complete, whether it is your household separation mission or the compulsory monthly mission. Fang Yuan remained silent and did not answer. The elder continued, of course, there is another option. You are already a rank 2 Gu Master, so you are qualified to become the leader of a small team. As long as you pass an assessment mission, you can establish your own team. Which path do you wish to choose? Fang Yuan blinked once. I have not decided yet. I need some time to consider, then you may leave. After returning, think it over quickly. You should settle your team arrangements within the next few days. Once this period passes, it will be much harder for you to enter any team, the elder said with concern. Inwardly, Fang Yuan laughed coldly. He would choose neither of these 2 paths. He had far too many secrets. Acting alone was not only safer, it was also more convenient. Otherwise, from now on, he would have to follow others at all times and move together with them. Would that not annoy Fang Yuan to death? After leaving the interrogation room, Fang Yuan did not immediately leave the Internal Affairs Hall. Instead, he applied for the household separation mission. The result he received was that recent affairs were busy, and he was told to return in 3 days to accept the mission. Leaving the main doors of the Internal Affairs Hall, he looked up at the sky. It was merely an ordinary winter afternoon, only. The winter was bleak, the cold wind cut into the bones, and the heavy air was filled with grief. Today is the collective memorial ceremony. Guyu Jinzhu is dead, Fang Yuan, did you know? Mo Bei stopped with a group of youths as they passed by. Aside from Mo Bei, Fang Zheng and Kai Cheng were also among them. Mo Bei and Kai Cheng had always been the least compatible in ordinary times, but today, it seemed they had forgotten their grudges and were walking together. Elder brother Jinzhu studied and lived with us for a year. Come with us, Fang Zheng said, Guyu Jinzhu. The image of a young girl immediately surfaced in Fang Yuan's mind. That girl had once fought evenly against Mo Bei on the battle stage, only losing in the end because she lacked stamina. She had indeed been a hardworking and diligent girl. However, before death, beautiful things and ugly things alike were treated equally. Most people would grieve because of this. But in Fang Yuan's eyes, such things had long since become ordinary. Oh, she died, Fang Yuan said. But birth, aging, sickness, and death are common to all people. See it enough and the feeling fades. You can go, I do not have time. Fang Yuan walked past everyone, that bastard. Many of the youths were furious. He really is cold-blooded and heartless. He does not care at all about the feelings of his classmates. Recently, rumors have spread everywhere through the clan. You have all heard them too, right? The reason Fang Yuan was lucky enough to survive was because he hid inside the Wild Boar's belly, then used a female Gu master as a shield. That is truly shameful. He does not have the slightest dignity of a man. Kai Cheng folded his arms and laughed coldly. Elder brother. Fang Zheng lowered his head and clenched his teeth. Listening to these words, as Fang Yuan's younger brother, he felt deeply ashamed. Fang Yuan walked away, and the mockery behind him grew farther and farther away until he could no longer hear it clearly. His heart remained completely calm, so what if they insulted him? Let them curse if they wanted. After cursing, what then? Those with shallow hearts were angered by insults and delighted by praise. But in truth, all of those things were merely the opinions outsiders held of you. One who lived according to the eyes of others was already destined to be pitiful. In reality, after being publicized by several people with intentions, Fang Yuan's reputation had already become rotten. Sacrificing a female teammate to preserve himself, such an act would not suffer punishment, but it would absolutely be condemned by public opinion. Yet this was precisely the situation Fang Yuan wished to create. Entering the system meant becoming a chess piece, unable to act freely, forced to follow the system's rules. To Fang Yuan, that was an enormous hindrance. He needed resources, and even more than that, he needed to act alone. So he wanted to become a solitary man. So what if everyone rejected him? Ha ha. Only those with weak hearts feared rejection. If this were Earth, anyone in his situation would certainly be doomed. After all, two fists could hardly fight four hands, and human relationships formed the protective circle of survival. But in this world, as long as one's cultivation was strong enough, one person could stand against 10, against 100. Even against tens of thousands, so what if one was rejected? If someone blocked your path, kill them directly. If you lacked resources, seize them directly. Different worlds had different rules. And different rules would determine different forms of society, giving rise to different ways humans acted. The higher the level of martial force in a world, the weaker the concept of the collective became. So in this world, demonic overlords roamed freely. What? That brat is already a rank 2 Gu master now, and he has even applied to the Internal Affairs Hall for the household separation mission. The shocked and angry voice of his uncle Gu Yudong II echoed through the reception room. That is indeed the case. Although I accepted your primeval stones, it is not convenient for me to stop him. I could only tell him to come back in 3 days to accept the mission. Delaying him by several days is already the limit of what I can do, the middle-aged male Gu master sitting beside him said. Gu Yudong II snorted coldly in his heart. He understood the meaning behind this Internal Affairs Hall Gu master's words. Words like delaying 3 days is already the limit were only a way of taking advantage of the situation to squeeze another sum of money from him. Still, the urgent matter right now is to do everything possible to keep the family property. This brat truly refuses to let people live in peace. Gu Yudong II's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Fang Yuan's speed of growth truly made him feel alarmed. I only came to inform you. I will take my leave now. The middle-aged male Gu master stood up to leave. Do not leave so quickly, old brother. There are still a few matters I would like to trouble you with. Gu Yudong II hurriedly rose and stuffed a money pouch into the man's hand. The male Gu master tucked the heavy pouch of primeval stones into his robes, then changed his tone and laughed loudly. Brother Dong II, you are too polite. What is the relationship between the two of us? We have known each other for more than 10 years. Rest assured, I will prepare the most difficult mission and assign it to Fang Yuan. However, I fear that Fang Yuan might hire other Gu masters. You must pay attention to that, ha ha ha, rest assured. Although I have already retired, this old brother of yours still has his network. I have already invited people to keep watch. If that brat hires outsiders, then he will be violating clan rules. I am still worried I will not be able to catch one of his weaknesses. Haha, then I can feel at ease. Farewell, I will see you out, no need. Please stay. Gu Yudong II watched the Gu master leave, and the smile on his face gradually collapsed. This Fang Yuan clearly has only C-grade aptitude. How did he advance to rank 2 so quickly? Damn it. What were Jiao San and his people doing? They could not even hold back one living person. Now all 4 members of Jiao San's team are dead in the beast tide. Truly, there is nothing left. Fang Yuan has even advanced to rank 2. Like this, he will definitely be able to receive the family property mission. The old methods of restricting him can no longer be used, but now he is alone. Completing a property mission by himself will still be extremely difficult. No, that is not right. This brat's luck is a little too sinister. I had just invited Jiao San's people to restrain him, and then the beast tide came. What if he relies on luck again and actually completes the mission? I must prepare for the worst. Old ginger is spicier. Gu Yudong too had been able to live safely and smoothly, until now because he himself already represented a certain kind of success. Compared with Fang Yuan who had just entered the world, his social connections were far stronger. Collecting honey wine. Fang Yuan accepted this household separation mission, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. This mission was extremely troublesome. It required collecting 5 liang of golden bee honey wine. Each golden bee was the size of a fist, its body striped with bright gold and black, and its stinger sharp and highly aggressive. That was not all. Ordinary small bee colonies only had honey. Only medium to large hives accumulated enough honey to ferment into the more precious honey wine. This mission would be extremely difficult even for a full 5-man team. After all, numbers are useless here. The goo master collecting the honey wine must possess a defensive goo worm and withstand the attack of the bee stingers. It seems Uncle has acted from the shadows trying to exploit the weakness that I do not have a defensive goo worm. Unfortunately, he miscalculated. Fang Yuan laughed coldly in his heart. At this point, the benefits of keeping the flower wine traveler's inheritance hidden were revealed. Things done in the shadows were easy to accomplish. Things done in the open were difficult to bring to completion. The more openly one acted, the easier it was for others to see through it and obstruct it. On the other hand, if one acted secretly, hiding one's trump cards so that others did not know the true situation, then they could not prescribe the right medicine for the illness. However, if I want to collect honey wine, relying only on Jade skin goo will not be enough. Jade skin goo is only a rank 1 goo worm. If it can be advanced into the rank 2 white jade goo, I believe this matter will become easy. There was absolutely no need to take reckless risks and test it. Fang Yuan's rich life experience allowed him to reduce many unnecessary detours. Speaking of which, Fang Yuan was now already a rank 2 initial stage goo master. But aside from spring-autumn cicada, all the goo worms on his body were rank 1 goo worms. This situation was like a large man capable of wielding a great guandao being forced to hold only a delicate little dagger. The dagger could not fully bring out the large man's greatest fighting strength. Only by forging a great guandao could it become the most suitable weapon. Asterisk Great Guandao, a long-handled blade of the type commonly associated with Guan Yu. Fang Yuan had 7 goo worms in his possession. His vital goo spring-autumn cicada, moonlight goo, liquor worm, white boar goo, jade skin goo, and 2 little light goo. Among them, moonlight goo and the 2 little light goo could be fused into the rank 2 moonglow goo. White boar goo and jade skin goo could be fused into white jade goo. Moonglow goo represented an increase in offensive capability, while white jade goo represented an increase in defense. If Fang Yuan had enough primeval stones, he naturally would have refined both. But not long ago, in order to push his cultivation into rank 2, he had consumed most of his primeval stones. Now the primeval stones in his hands were only enough for 1 fusion attempt. There is no question. Choosing to fuse white jade goo is the wiser decision. With white jade goo, I can collect honey wine. Moreover, white jade goo will also help with the flower wine traveler's inheritance. But if this fusion fails, the consequences will be very serious. My finances are already on the verge of collapse. Without white jade goo, I cannot inherit the family property. If I become stuck at this step, it will greatly delay my growth speed. Fang Yuan felt a faint pressure. He knew he had reached a critical moment. If the fusion succeeded, his future would naturally brighten. If it failed, it would be like falling into an abyss. To climb back to his current situation, he would have to spend a great deal of time and effort once more. A goo master uses his own primeval sea as the foundation and goo worms as the medium. Goo are essential to goo masters. Without goo, there is no such thing as a goo master. Aside from one's own cultivation, a goo master must also refine goo, raise goo, and use goo. Inside the room, clan leader Gu Yubo carefully and thoroughly explained to Fang Zhang. Refining, raising, and using each of these three aspects contains vast and profound knowledge. One could spend an entire life and still fail to explore them fully. In terms of refining, you already know how to refine a goo worm and how to use it. But that is only single refinement. Aside from single refinement, there is something even more important, fusion refinement. Through fusion refinement, multiple different goo worms can be combined into a higher rank goo worm. This is the evolution and sublimation of life. Fang Zhang, you have long since reached rank 2, but the goo worms in your hands are still only rank 1. You should fuse a rank 2 goo worm. Fang Zhang asked clan leader, then how should I fuse them? Gu Yubo said to perform fusion, one must know the secret recipe. Some goo worms cannot be fused together. After countless years of development and accumulation, through continuous practice and countless failures, our ancestors summarized many secret recipes. Our Guyu clan has studied Moonlight Gu the most deeply. To this day we possess 2 rank 5 secret recipes. What is meant by a rank 5 secret recipe? It means that by following this secret recipe and continuously carrying out fusion refinement, one can eventually refine a rank 5 goo worm. Fang Zhang, in your hands you have a Jade skin goo and a Moonlight goo. They fit one of these rank 5 secret recipes. If you follow this recipe, the final result will be the rank 5 goo worm, Treasured Moonlight King goo. Treasured Moonlight King goo. Fang Zhang's eyes revealed anticipation. Ha ha ha, it is still too early to speak of rank 5 goo worms with you. Come, take out your Jade skin goo and Moonlight goo. I will guide you in fusing these 2 goo into the rank 2 Moon Raiment goo. At this point, Gu Yubo's expression turned solemn. The most important thing in fusing goo worms is multitasking with one's mind, merging the consciousnesses. The wild consciousness of the Moonlight goo and Jade skin goo in your hands no longer exists. They have already been replaced by your consciousness. What you must do now is merge these 2 threads of consciousness into one. Merge them into one. Fang Zhang blinked, his face full of confusion. Gu Yubo smiled, do not worry. With more practice you will grasp the feeling. Now begin. Yes, Fang Zhang nodded. Under Gu Yubo's guidance, pale red iron primeval essence rose like mist, lifting the Jade skin goo and Moonlight goo into the air. Fang Zhang closed his eyes and began sensing and controlling the consciousnesses inside the 2 goo worms at the same time. Gu Yubo stood outside, watching carefully at every moment. He saw Jade skin goo and Moonlight goo revolve around each other like 2 bright stars. As the consciousnesses merged more and more, the distance between the 2 goo worms also grew smaller and smaller. After 3 continuous shichen of effort, the consciousnesses within their bodies were finally moved by Fang Zhang and completely fused together. In the next instant, both Jade skin goo and Moonlight goo erupted with dazzling white light. The 2 patches of light linked together, and before long they formed a halo as large as a wash basin. Maintain this state, then throw primeval stones into the halo, Gu Yubo instructed at once. Fang Zhang took out a primeval stone and placed it into the halo. Strangely, after the primeval stone entered, it turned into a stream of pure natural primeval essence, completely dissolving into the halo. Only a little white stone powder remained, drifting down onto the bed sheets. Continue throwing them in until the rank 2 goo worm is successfully fused, Gu Yubo said. Fang Zhang threw in the second stone. But at that moment, the white light suddenly disappeared. The 2 goo worms seemed to have been violently pushed away from each other and shot in opposite directions. The fusion had failed, oh no. Just now I forgot to maintain the fusion of consciousness. Fang Zhang quickly realized the mistake he had made. Do not worry. Failure in the first few attempts is very normal. Gu Yubo comforted him, then reminded him, however, you must pay attention. You cannot fail too many times. Otherwise, the Moonlight goo and Jade skin goo will both perish. Fang Zhang summoned Jade skin goo and Moonlight goo back. Sure enough, he discovered tiny cracks had appeared on the surface of Moonlight goo, while Jade skin goo seemed somewhat dispirited. His heart suddenly grew heavy. Only now did he truly feel the difficulty of refining goo. Crash, crash, crash. Within the primeval sea, waves rose and fell. Looking across it, there was now an expanse of pale red. This was no longer the former green bronze sea, but a red iron sea. The four walls of the aperture were a bright silver membrane. This was the scene of rank 2 initial stage. The entire red iron primeval sea occupied 44% of the aperture. Above the surface of the sea, spring-autumn cicada appeared in midair. After nearly a year of slumber and recovery, it had finally shown improvement. Its body, which had previously lost all luster and appeared rough and dull like a piece of rotten deadwood, now had a little smoothness again. Its 2 wings had once been like dry leaves withered in an autumn wind, their edges incomplete in many places. But now, a few fresh green spots had appeared on those wings, and the edges seemed to have been redrawn by a black outline, forming a complete arc without any missing gaps. Spring-autumn cicada, spring and autumn, so that is how it is. For it to recover, it must pass through spring and autumn. Since his rebirth, a full year had already passed, one complete cycle of spring and autumn. That was why it had recovered somewhat. Fang Yuan stared at the spring-autumn cicada, and his thoughts could not help opening further. His understanding of spring-autumn cicada deepened once again. A goo master refined goo, raised goo, and used goo. Of these, use was divided into countless varieties, numbering in the thousands and tens of thousands. Fang Yuan lived day and night together with spring-autumn cicada, so his understanding of it had gradually accumulated and deepened without stop. But spring-autumn cicada is still very weak. It is merely as if it has crawled a few steps forward from the edge of death's cliff. I can use its aura to pressure goo worms and increase the effectiveness of single refinement. But as for fusion refinement, it cannot help. There were other mysterious goo worms that could improve the success rate of fusion refinement. Each profession had its own specialization. Spring-autumn cicada only had the ability to rebirth. Aside from spring-autumn cicada, the fat liquor worm was curled up in the sea, swimming and playing happily in the water. The white boar goo resembled a ladybug, flying around together with Jade skin goo, which looked like a piece of jade. Fang Yuan opened his eyes and slowly opened his palm. On his right palm was the mark of a crescent moon and 2 5-pointed stars. These were moonlight goo and the 2 little light goo residing in his hand. Fang Yuan sat cross-legged on the bed, his gaze falling upon the things placed before him. In front of him were 3 money pouches. 2 were bulging while the third was half-flat. Aside from those, there was also a tusk from the Wild Boar King. It resembled an elephant tusk, lying quietly beside Fang Yuan's foot. After 6 Snake's team had spent great effort killing the Wild Boar King, they encountered the attack of the Lightning Wolf Pack. Most of the Wild Boar King's flesh and hide had been eaten by the Lightning Wolves. Only the 2 snow-white tusks remained as the most valuable spoils. According to clan rules, as one of the members who had slain the Wild Boar King, Fang Yuan could receive one of the Wild Boar King's tusks for free. Fang Yuan looked at the items before him, his expression grave. My primeval stones are not many. They are only enough for 1 fusion attempt. After this fusion, whether it succeeds or fails, my finances will collapse. But if I delay the fusion, then in less than 10 days, my primeval stones will continue being consumed one after another. And I will not even have the chance to fuse anymore. Fang Yuan was raising 7 goo worms, and the financial burden was heavy. Moreover, because of his C-grade aptitude, he had to repeatedly use the liquor worm to cultivate more quickly. Thus, his consumption of primeval stones was much higher than that of ordinary people. Recently, he had no longer used primeval stones to rapidly replenish the primeval essence in his aperture. The red iron sea inside him now was entirely the result of his own natural recovery. Fang Yuan had already begun to ration his primeval stones and calculate living expenses. He could no longer casually waste them. His current situation was like someone about to fall off a cliff, barely hanging near the edge by gripping a clump of wild grass. But as time passed, that wild grass in his hand would continue snapping strand by strand. If he did not make a desperate effort, it would not hold him for much longer. He would fall off the cliff. What he needed to do now was use that grass while it was still in his hand and rely on it to climb up the cliff with all his strength. If he succeeded, he could obtain the family property, climb onto another step, and his life would enter a new phase. If he failed, he would fall. To climb back to this point again, he would have to spend a great deal of time and effort all over again. No matter what begin. Fang Yuan took a deep breath and his gaze turned calm. White Boar Goo, Jade Skin Goo. The two goo worms followed his will and emerged from his aperture, floating in front of him. Fuse, Fang Yuan shouted inwardly. White Boar Goo and Jade Skin Goo erupted with dazzling light and collided directly into one another. This collision was utterly soundless. Everything transformed into a halo of white light. The white light became even more dazzling than before. This meant that Fang Yuan's two streams of consciousness were merging. While using his consciousness to maintain the white halo, Fang Yuan took primeval stones from the pouches and threw them one by one into the halo. The halo swallowed the primeval stones, leaving only clumps of powder to fall onto the bed. Every time it swallowed one, the halo expanded slightly. The halo absorbed the natural primeval essence and grew larger and larger. From its original washbasin size, it gradually became as large as a millstone. It is time. Fang Yuan narrowed his eyes, grabbed the Wild Boar King's tusk, and decisively threw it into the halo. If others saw this scene, they would likely cry out in alarm. That was because everyone knew the secret recipe for combining White Boar Goo and Jade Skin Goo into White Jade Goo had been passed down for over 1,000 years. But no one had ever heard that it also required the tusk of a Wild Boar King. However, the fact that it did not exist in the past did not mean it would not exist in the future. 150 years from now, a Goo Master would improve this recipe. He would discover that adding a wild boar tusk could greatly raise the success rate of the fusion. Fang Yuan had been reborn from 500 years in the future, so naturally he knew this secret. The white tusk entered the halo, and an extraordinary change immediately occurred. The originally dazzling white light suddenly became gentle. Previously, it had only emitted brilliance in all directions, but now it seemed to move like waves, alternating between brightness and dimness, mysterious and natural. Under Fang Yuan's focused gaze, the halo slowly shrank. In the end, it completely disappeared into the air. Jade Skin Goo and White Boar Goo were gone. Only an entirely new goo worm floated quietly before Fang Yuan. It resembled a pebble, its whole body white. But this white was not the pale white of paper, nor the creamy white of milk. It was a smooth white, carrying the glossy sheen of jade. This was the rank 2 White Jade Goo. Only now did Fang Yuan lightly exhale, and the stone weighing on his heart finally settled. Do not look at this process and think it had been simple. In reality, it had not been simple at all. First, merging consciousness required multitasking of the mind. For an ordinary person, drawing a circle with one hand and a square with the other was already multitasking. Many people found even that difficult, let alone true multitasking of a far higher level. This required endless accumulation, bitter training, countless failures and setbacks, and a certain degree of talent before one could truly do it. The reason Fang Yuan could do it with such familiarity and ease was entirely due to the experience accumulated over 500 years. Not a single bit of it could be faked. Second was understanding and knowledge of goo worms. The deeper a goo master's understanding of goo worms, the higher the success rate of fusion refinement. This too was an accurate understanding that would only become widely accepted around 300 years later. Therefore, generally speaking, the longer one used a goo worm, the higher the chance of successful fusion. Third was having a correct and more unique secret recipe. For example, adding the white tusk this time was like painting the dragon and dotting its eyes. It instantly raised the success rate by 20%. The effect was truly extraordinary. Some secret recipes were widely circulated in this world, but many were carefully hidden and never passed down. For example, the Moonlight Goo of Guyu Mountain Stronghold. Its refinement recipe was only held in the hands of a few elders and the clan leaders of each generation. This was especially true for recipes that could reach rank 5 and above. Goo masters kept them secret, valuing them like their own lives. Many goo masters would never pass them on unless they were on their deathbeds. But even with these three conditions, absolute success was still impossible. Even someone like Fang Yuan, who possessed 500 years of memories from his previous life, extremely rich experience, deep understanding of goo worms, multitasking ability, and knowledge of many secret recipes, could still fail when fusing goo worms. One could only say that his failure rate was relatively low. Fusing goo worms was close to sublimation, a creation of life. It compressed time to the limit, causing a long process of evolution to blossom and bear fruit in an instant. On Earth, only gods could do such a thing. Without question, this was a miracle of life. For goo masters to use mortal bodies and open the door to divine miracles, how could they succeed every time? If they succeeded every time, then they would not be human, they would be gods. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days passed. Within the belly of the mountain in the underground stone forest, screech, screech, screech. The figures of more than a dozen jade-eyed stone monkeys blurred through the air. They leapt about continuously, launching fierce attacks at Fang Yuan. If this had been before, Fang Yuan would have had to retreat without question. But now he merely stood in place, his expression cold and unmoving like a mountain. The monkeys punched, clawed, and bit at Fang Yuan's body, producing crisp metallic sounds. It was as if they were not surrounding and attacking a human, but a hard pillar of jade stone. A layer of faint white jade light clung close to Fang Yuan's entire body. Though this layer of light was thinner than the green jade glow of jade skin goo, its defensive power was more than twice as strong. Jade skin goo's defense could at most endure 16 monkeys attacking at the same time. But now, Fang Yuan alone could face more than 30 monkeys. On the battle stage, I was once able to break through Fang Zhang's jade skin goo defense. But if Fang Zhang had used this white jade goo, then even if I broke my hand bones, I would still not have been able to shatter the defense. Fang Yuan thought inwardly, while also dividing part of his attention toward the primeval sea inside his aperture. Within the red iron primeval sea, white jade goo sank to the bottom. It constantly absorbed primeval essence, and its surface emitted a faint white jade glow like a small lamp. Every time the monkeys attacked Fang Yuan, the surface of this pebble-like white jade goo would flash slightly. At the same time, Fang Yuan could feel his consumption of primeval essence increase a little faster. The defense of white jade goo is like jade skin goo. Both require continuous infusion of primeval essence. Moreover, the more attacks it endures, the more primeval essence it consumes, Fang Yuan concluded inwardly. At the same time, he suddenly launched a counterattack. His fists and feet moved, wind sweeping up dust. His techniques were simple yet ruthless, his movements sharp and clean. Although white boar goo had vanished, the ability it had brought Fang Yuan still remained within his body. The monkeys were constantly struck by Fang Yuan. Some were kicked flying and smashed into the stone pillars. Some were killed directly in midair, turning to stone and falling to the ground, their bodies splitting apart. Moreover, as Fang Yuan swung his hands, moonblades flew out one after another like the scythes of the god of death, harvesting the monkeys' lives. Driven by red iron primeval essence, every attack from the rank 1 moonlight goo produced its greatest offensive effect against the monkeys. Screech, screech, the monkeys cried out in terror and continuously retreated. Fang Yuan had only counterattacked for a short while, but most of them had already perished. Only 5 or 6 remained. Fang Yuan killed one more, and finally the remaining monkeys collapsed completely, fleeing in panic into the depths of the stone forest. Fang Yuan did not chase these defeated remnants. Instead, he continued forward, advancing into the center of the stone forest. Over the past several days, he had been trying hard to search for clues to the next step of the inheritance. As he continued searching, he had already set foot across the entire outer ring of the stone forest and found nothing. Fang Yuan also gradually understood. He could vaguely guess the intention of the flower wine traveler. He believed that the clue to the next step was very likely arranged by the flower wine traveler at the center of this stone forest. The deeper he went into the stone forest, the larger the stone pillars became and the more monkeys lived within them. As Fang Yuan walked, he looked toward the distance. At the center of the stone forest stood the largest stone pillar. Even more than 10 grown men joining hands would not be enough to surround it. That stone pillar was his next objective. But the deeper he went, the larger the monkey troops became, and the difficulty naturally rose higher. Fang Yuan took a key step, stepping into the alert range of the monkey troop. Screech, screech, screech. From every black hole on the stone pillar, an enraged Jade-eyed stone monkey immediately emerged. In total, more than 100 monkeys pounced toward Fang Yuan at the same time. Fang Yuan turned and ran. Facing the attacks of so many monkeys at once, even with white jade goo, he could not endure it. The monkey troop chased Fang Yuan for a while. Then one after another, some gave up and returned. Gradually, only 30 or so monkeys remained behind him. Seeing that the moment had arrived, Fang Yuan turned and fought. After a burst of slaughter, only a few monkeys remained. They fled in panic, not even daring to return to their original stone holes. Just like this, after several rounds, Fang Yuan killed more than 100 monkeys. Along the way, stones formed from their shattered bodies could be seen everywhere. My primeval essence is not enough. Fang Yuan briefly checked his primeval side and had no choice but to stop advancing. If this had been before, he would have long since used primeval stones to recover quickly. But ever since fusing white jade goo, he was terribly short of primeval stones. It could be said that his finances had completely collapsed. Fang Yuan picked up the jade eyeballs scattered across the ground one by one and placed them into his bag. It should be right beneath the central stone pillar. But to reach it, I must first carve out a path. This feeling in him grew stronger and stronger. Finally, Fang Yuan looked back once more, opened the stone door, and returned to the second hidden chamber. In one corner of the hidden chamber was a small pile of miscellaneous items. Among them was a hemp sack containing several hundred jade eyeballs. Fang Yuan opened it and poured in all the jade he had harvested today. The jade stones struck one another, producing a clear, crisp sound. There was also another hemp sack containing wild boar tusks. But now, Fang Yuan no longer needed to hunt wild boars. He had successfully fused white boar goo and jade skin goo into white jade goo. White boar goo had disappeared, and with it, his need for pork had fallen to zero. This newly born white jade goo leaned more toward jade skin goo, and its food was jade. Every 10 days, jade skin goo needed to consume 2 liang of jade. White jade goo, however, needed to be fed 8 liang of jade every 20 days. Ordinarily, the higher the rank of a goo worm, the longer the interval between feedings. Most rank 2 goo worms ate once every half a month or more, while rank 3 goo worms often needed feeding only after more than a month. Of course, the higher the rank of the goo worm, the greater its appetite. On average, the cost of raising white jade goo was even higher than jade skin goo and white boar goo combined. But for Fang Yuan, he now had this underground stone forest and had no shortage of jade. Moreover, since he no longer needed pork, he did not have to hunt wild boars anymore. This saved him a great deal of trouble and a great deal of time. After tying the mouth of the small hemp sack, Fang Yuan picked up the oxhide water pouch beside him. The water pouch was bulging. Inside was filled with golden bee honey wine. Several days ago, Fang Yuan had relied on jade skin goo to withstand the attacks of the golden bees, then collected enough honey wine from the hive. I only have 2.5 primeval stones left. It is time to go to the Internal Affairs Hall and turn in the family property mission. Fang Yuan placed the oxhide water pouch into his robes, then followed the underground tunnel back out through the rock crevice and returned outside. At this time it was dusk. The dusk of a winter day was clear and bright, without much feeling of cold. The setting sun emitted a warm orange-red color, and thin rays of light passed through the pine canopy, falling upon the mountain slopes. Traveling alone, he walked toward the stronghold. However, Fang Yuan did not move straight ahead. He deliberately took several winding paths, reducing the chance that the cave within the rock crevice would be discovered. The winter wind brushed against his face, carrying the taste of freedom. Previously, while still in the academy, he could only sneak there at night. But now Fang Yuan had already advanced to rank 2, and freely entering and exiting during the day would not arouse anyone's suspicion. Of course. The main reason was still that 6 Snake's 4 team members were dead, leaving Fang Yuan alone and greatly reducing part of his restrictions. The only challenge was that Fang Yuan was now alone, with no teammates to support him. In the future, he would have to complete at least 1 clan mission every month. This would inevitably make things much harder for him. By now, after the small beast tide, the reorganization of teams had already been completed. Fang Yuan had missed the timing. Moreover, because of his reputation, Fang Yuan was being secretly rejected by other Gu masters. It would not be easy for him to join another small team. Let them reject me. The freer I am outside, the fewer eyes there are watching me, and the more beneficial it is for me. As for the clan's monthly missions, they are compulsory, so I naturally must accept them. But, thinking up to this point, a cold light flashed in Fang Yuan's eyes. He had already made plans for this matter long ago. The clan required Gu masters to accept at least one mission every month, but it did not require that mission to be completed. If a mission was not completed, the evaluation would fall. This was something almost no Gu master wanted to see, so they would all do everything possible to complete their missions. But to Fang Yuan, what did this so-called evaluation count for? He stepped into the mountain stronghold. On the road paved with green stone, people came and went continuously. Ordinarily, this was the busiest time of day. Gu masters who had completed missions returned to the mountain stronghold, covered in wounds and looking disheveled. Farmers who had worked all day dragged their exhausted bodies along in silence, their feet covered in mud. In this world, life was not easy for anyone. Everyone carried bitterness and suffering. The light of sunset gradually lowered beyond the mountaintop, releasing its last gentle rays. Those rays were then torn apart by crisscrossing dry branches, turning into fragments of time that fell upon the walls of the green bamboo buildings. "Ah, my toy," a little girl in the crowd cried out and chased after a spinning top. The spinning top happened to roll beneath Fang Yuan's feet, and the little girl bumped into his leg and fell to the ground. I am sorry. She bumped into a Gu Master Lord, please forgive us. The child's father hurried over. When he saw Fang Yuan's clothing, his face turned as white as paper. He pulled the little girl down to kneel on the spot and continuously kowtowed to Fang Yuan. The child was so frightened that she began to cry. Tear after tear slid down her fair little face. The mortals on the road, seeing this scene, all detoured and moved to both sides. A few Gu masters glanced coldly at them, then quickly shifted their eyes away. Stop crying, you troublemaker. The father was both frightened and angry. He raised his hand to slap her, but Fang Yuan caught his arm and he could not move. It is only a small matter. There is no need to worry. Fang Yuan smiled faintly, reached out and touched the little girl's head. He gently comforted her, do not be afraid, nothing has happened. The little girl stopped sobbing. Her watery eyes looked up at Fang Yuan, thinking that the elder brother before her seemed very gentle. Thank you, Lord, for your mercy. Thank you, Lord, for your mercy. The little girl's father was so relieved that tears flowed down his face, and he kept kowtowing to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan continued walking. The room he rented was not far from here. And beneath that bamboo building, Gu Yudong too was standing there, looking toward Fang Yuan from afar. Clearly, he had been waiting for him. With Gu Yudong too's ability, he naturally could find out where Fang Yuan was living. Today, unusually, he wore the martial uniform of a Gu master. His legs were bound with puttees, a red belt tied around his waist. He looked neat and proper, displaying a kind of imposing dignity. He watched Fang Yuan slowly approach. His eyes glanced at the belt on the young man's waist, and he could not help feeling moved. Only C-grade aptitude, yet he broke through to rank 2 at 16. It is truly beyond everyone's expectations. I truly do not know how he succeeded in charging through, however. With such speed, most of the credit should belong to the liquor worm. Unfortunately, at rank 2, the liquor worm can no longer be used. Immediately afterward, he saw the faint smile at the corner of Fang Yuan's mouth. That smile made Gu Yudong too feel a chill in his heart. Then anger rose into his head, this brat acting so calm. Is it because he thinks he has me completely in his grasp? Fang Yuan walked over unhurriedly and stood before Gu Yudong too. He knew the other party had definitely come looking for him. Sure enough, his uncle Gu Yudong too opened his mouth and said, Fang Yuan, I think we should talk for a moment. Talk about what? Fang Yuan raised an eyebrow. Gu Yudong too smiled but changed the topic. Do you know you and I are different? I entered the world at 15. At that time, we were facing the wolf tide. Gu masters were dying in large numbers. Under the circumstances, we students had no choice but to graduate. I had B-grade aptitude. At 16, I reached initial stage. At 17, upper stage. At 18, peak stage. When I was 19, I began attacking rank 3. I believed I could advance to become a rank 3 Gu master at 20. Ha ha ha. I was arrogant, looking down on everyone. I always believed I could do anything, and that there was nothing I could not accomplish. I truly did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Then, when I was 20, I went out to carry out a mission, and was defeated by a Gu master from Xing clan village. At that time, I was gravely injured and nearly died. Fortunately, the medicine hall elder personally acted and saved my life. But after that, my aptitude was crippled, falling to C grade. For 8 full years, I could not recover from that blow. On my 29th birthday, I began examining myself in this world. I discovered that the strength of one person is limited. Even if I advance to rank 3, so what? A person lives within society. The most important thing is not individual strength, but one's relationships with other people. When I was 30, I started moving forward again. At 45, I withdrew to the second line. During those years, more than a dozen times, hundreds of Gu masters jointly signed letters wanting to recommend me as a clan elder. Although I only had rank 2 peak stage cultivation and could never take another step forward in my life, it was no longer necessary. I had already succeeded. The clansmen call me the hidden elder. The vast majority of those from my generation are already dead, yet I still live very peacefully. My influence over the Gu masters still active outside remains as strong as before. After speaking so much, Gu Yudong too finally returned to the main point. He looked at Fang Yuan, the corner of his mouth curving. Fang Yuan, you are still too young. You have just entered the world just like I was back then. You think you can decide everything yourself, that you can accomplish anything alone. Ha ha. Gu Yudong too shook his head and continued. But when you experience more of life, you will understand that a person is still, in the end, a member of society. Not a wild beast traveling alone. Sometimes, life requires lowering one's head and yielding. Extremism, stubbornness, defiance, arrogance, all of these only lead to isolation and destruction. I believe you have already seen it now. Not a single team is willing to accept you. The people around you all reject you. Even if you receive the household separation mission, what then? You are already a solitary man. You absolutely have no chance of completing that mission. Give up. Fang Yuan looked at the middle-aged man before him indifferently. His expression remained completely calm. If he knew I had already lived a life of 500 years, I wonder what kind of expression he would have. Thinking this, a smile could not help appearing in Fang Yuan's eyes. In fact, his uncle's thoughts were also the view of life Fang Yuan had held for a very long period. It was precisely because of that he had created the Bloodwing Demon sect, relying on systems and human hearts to build an enormous force with all his strength. With one command, tens of thousands responded. He seized resources and fought against powerful enemies. But after he broke through to rank 6, the scenery he saw was completely different. Gu masters from rank 1 to rank 5 were mortal. Rank 6 was immortal. When he stood at that height and looked back on life again, he suddenly awakened. A vast force could indeed be his assistant, but at the same time, it was also an enormous burden and restraint. No matter which world it was, the only one truly worthy of trust was oneself. It was only that people in the world were often weak. Humans, in the end, could not endure desolation and could not bear loneliness. They liked to chase kinship, friendship, and love to fill the emptiness in their souls. They were intoxicated by the collective and feared solitude. Once they failed, they hid inside the collective, complained of suffering to relatives and friends, poured out their hearts to companions, and did not dare face fear and failure alone. When there was pain, they busied themselves sharing it. When there was joy, they eagerly displayed it. Had Gu Yudong too succeeded? Without question, he had succeeded. When he could no longer walk down his original road, he changed to another path and stepped into a new sky. but he was also a failure. He had lowered his head because of one defeat. He was nothing more than a coward, yet he was proud of his own escape. Gu Yudong, too, naturally did not know Fang Yuan had already judged him as a coward. Seeing that Fang Yuan still had not spoken, he thought Fang Yuan had been overawed by his words. He continued, "Fang Yuan, you are not Fang Zhang, so I will speak plainly. If you can give up the idea of inheriting the family property, then you can gain my friendship. You can use all of my connections. Moreover, I can also compensate you with 1,000 primeval stones. I know you have been short on money recently, even owing rent for 2 days." Fang Yuan laughed faintly and said, "Uncle, you do not often wear this outfit, do you?" Gu Yudong too was stunned. He had not expected Fang Yuan to suddenly speak of this topic. But Fang Yuan was indeed correct. He had retired for a long time, and this outfit had been pressed at the bottom of his chest. Today, he had deliberately worn it to meet Fang Yuan, in order to increase his persuasiveness and intimidation. Fang Yuan sighed lightly, examining Gu Yudong 2's clothes as he slowly said, "The clothing of a Gu master should not be so clean and neat. It should be stained with sweat, mud, and fresh blood. It should be torn and worn. Only then does it carry the smell of a Gu master. You are old now, uncle. Your ambition was already lost when you were young. These years of peaceful living have worn away your heart. You are fighting over the family property not for cultivation, but to maintain your wealthy lifestyle. With such a mentality, how can you possibly stop me?" Gu Yudong 2's face instantly turned pale, and anger suddenly surged in his heart. In this world, there would always be a group of old people. They sold their social experience everywhere, believing that other people's ideals were delusions, that other people's passion was arrogance, and that other people's persistence was stubbornness. They lectured the younger generation to seek a sense of superiority and a sense of existence. Without question, Gu Yudong too was one of these people. He wanted to teach Fang Yuan a lesson. But he never expected that Fang Yuan would not only refuse to listen and submit, but instead teach him a lesson in return. "Fang Yuan," he shouted, "as your elder I have kindly advised you, yet you do not know good from bad. HMPH. Since you are set on opposing me, then come. I do not mind telling you that I have long known the contents of your household separation mission. Young people do not know how high the sky is or how deep the earth is. Ha ha. I would like to see how you complete this mission." Fang Yuan laughed coldly. At this point, there was no need to conceal anything. Since the conflict could no longer be reconciled, he did not mind enjoying Gu Yudong 2's next wonderful expression. Immediately afterward, he took out the oxhide water pouch, opened the cap, and a faint sweet fragrance unique to honey wine floated out. "What do you think is inside this?" he said. His uncle was utterly shocked. His heart seemed to sink to the bottom of a valley. "How can this be? Where did you get the honey wines?" He roared, his face filled with disbelief and terror. Fang Yuan paid him no further attention. He put the cap back on, placed the pouch back into his robes, and walked toward the internal affairs hall. His uncle's body broke out in cold sweat. Thoughts churned wildly in his head. Where did he get the honey wine? I already made arrangements. If he sought out another team, I would have received the news first. Could he have completed it alone? No, how is that possible? He does not have a defensive goo worm. Someone must have helped him. No. The important thing right now is not figuring out the reason. This brat Fang Yuan already has the honey wine. He is going to turn in the mission. Thinking this, Gu Yudong 2's heart completely panicked. The calmness he had shown just now was gone. He hurried after Fang Yuan. "Fang Yuan, wait a moment. Everything can still be discussed." Fang Yuan said nothing and continued walking. Gu Yudong too could only follow closely beside him. If 1,000 primeval stones is not enough, then 2,000, Gu Yudong too said, continuously raising the price. Fang Yuan ignored him, though in truth, some anticipation began to rise in his heart. Seeing Gu Yudong too so anxious, increasing the price again and again, it seemed the family property must be very valuable. Gu Yudong too was so anxious that his head was covered in sweat. Seeing that Fang Yuan gave no reaction at all, his face began to turn vicious. And he threatened through clenched teeth, "Fang Yuan, you had better think clearly. What will happen if you offend me, HMPH? If you lose an arm or a leg in the future, do not blame this uncle for being heartless. Fang Yuan laughed aloud. This Guyu Dong too was truly a pitiful person. He was bound by rules. The water pouch was clearly within arm's reach, yet he did not dare snatch it. With such cowardice, how could he fight for benefits and succeed? Fortune is found in danger. No matter which world it is, if one wants to obtain something, one must pay a great price. Fang Yuan, do not think that everything will be smooth once you obtain the family property. Let me tell you, you are still too young. You do not understand society. You do not understand how sinister people can be. Guyu Dong too growled beside Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan shook his head and ignored him. Under his uncle's furious glare, he walked into the internal affairs hall. Toward this uncle, he did not actually feel hatred. He was not even disgusted. He had seen far too many people like this and could understand them as well. If Fang Yuan had enough primeval stones to support his cultivation, he would not even fight over this family property. It was only a small benefit. If his uncle wanted it, so what? Why had he been reborn? Not to fight over temporary victories and losses. What he wanted was to step onto the highest peak. These passing people, as long as they did not disturb him, could scream beside him all they liked. Fang Yuan would not even bother stepping on them. But this Guyu Dong too insisted on blocking Fang Yuan's path. Since that was the case, he would step on him and move forward. Fang Yuan, Fang Yuan. His uncle Guyu Dong too watched helplessly as Fang Yuan walked into the internal affairs hall. His whole body trembled and blue veins bulged on his forehead. The setting sun shone upon the white hair at his temples. He truly was already old. When he suffered that injury at 20, he had already grown old. Fang Yuan entered the internal affairs hall and submitted the golden bee honey wine. The middle-aged male Gu master in charge of receiving him was extremely stunned. Holding a brush, he asked, "So you completed the household separation mission. What do you think?" Fang Yuan asked back. The middle-aged male Gu master immediately frowned. This mission had been deliberately chosen by him, specifically to make things difficult for Fang Yuan. He had not expected Fang Yuan to complete it so quickly. He looked at Fang Yuan, his gaze severe and serious. "Young man, when I ask you something, you answer. If you do not make things clear, it will affect your evaluation. I ask you, did you complete this mission alone? You must speak the truth. We will investigate." "Of course I completed it alone." "Good, remember that." The middle-aged male Gu master wrote it down while laughing coldly inwardly. How could a newcomer like him complete such a mission alone? Lying like this will surely lead the clan to investigate. At that point, the trouble will only grow larger. Yet Fang Yuan continued, however, the situation was a little special. "That day I only went out to scout. I never expected to encounter a wild bear digging into a beehive. I seized the chance and obtained this honey wine." "What?" The middle-aged male Gu master's brush stopped, and he raised his head to look at Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan shrugged and smiled. "Otherwise, how did you think I could complete this mission alone? Speaking of which, I still have to thank you for choosing this mission for me." The middle-aged male Gu master was instantly stunned in place, his emotions complicated beyond words. After a long while, he could only give 2 dry laughs and continue recording the report. Fang Yuan calmly looked at this man. He knew perfectly well that this difficult household separation mission was obviously the man's contribution. Unfortunately, Fang Yuan had completed the mission. Even if the clan became suspicious and went to verify it, Fang Yuan had already made the corresponding arrangements. This man could no longer stop him, no matter how much he wanted to. Even if he personally acted, it would be the same. This was the sorrow of entering the system. One's status became shackles. "Very well, your mission is complete. You may inherit the family properties. However, the property left by your parents is currently being managed by your uncle and aunt. The Internal Affairs Hall will retrieve it for you. Return in 3 days," the middle-aged male Gu master said after a moment. Fang Yuan nodded, he knew this rule. But he stared at the sheet of paper the Gu master was recording on and said, "According to clan regulations, the mission record of the Internal Affairs Hall must be confirmed on the spot by the person who completed it. Please let me see this record. The male Gu Master's expression changed slightly. He had not expected Fang Yuan to be so familiar with the procedure. He snorted and handed the written record to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan accepted it and looked it over. There was nothing wrong with the record. It was several hundred words long, somewhat wordy, and at the end the evaluation was good. He immediately understood the degree of closeness between this Gu Master and Gu Yudong too. This evaluation was very straightforward. It showed that although the middle-aged Gu Master had helped Gu Yudong too, he had not abandoned his professional principles for him. The reason he assisted Gu Yudong too was likely only because of personal friendship and as a transaction. It was the kind of thing described as taking someone's money to help them remove a disaster. After returning the record to the middle-aged Gu Master, Fang Yuan left the Internal Affairs Hall. When he went out, he no longer saw Gu Yudong too. Fang Yuan could not help laughing coldly. Gu Yudong too's influence was not great enough to affect the operation of the Internal Affairs Hall. Even if clan leader Gu Yubo wanted to do such a thing, he would have to resist enormous pressure from the elder faction and pay a large price in political benefits. On Earth there was a saying, in the Jianghu one's body is not one's own. The Jianghu had its rules, and in truth that too was a kind of system. Once one entered the system, anyone became a chess piece. They restrained one another and could not act freely according to their own will. Unless one's personal strength reached the point of standing against the entire organization. Entering an organization while still wanting absolute freedom was nothing but a foolish dream. Through the power of the clan system, Fang Yuan reclaiming the family property was already an unchangeable fact. Forget Gu Yudong too. Even the clan leader would not pay a great price for such a small matter. In the reception room. Brother Dong too, in this matter I truly am powerless. The middle-aged male Gu Master stood before Gu Yudong too and sighed. Gu Yudong too sat heavily in the main seat, silent and expressionless. Is there truly no other way? Beside him his aunt asked in panic, her voice filled with anxiety and unwillingness. The middle-aged male Gu Master slowly shook his head. The matter has been decided. With the Internal Affairs Hall's procedure, unless two of the acting Grand Elders or the clan leader act, nothing can stop it. Brother Dong too, this list from the Internal Affairs Hall records the estate in detail. Please return everything in full. Do not make things difficult for me. After saying this, he handed over a list. The list was densely written. It recorded everything from real estate to tables and chairs, as well as the Gu worms left behind by Fang Yuan's parents. After a Gu Master died in battle, if their Gu worms were recovered, they would be left to the Gu Master's heir as part of the inheritance. This was also one of the clan's foremost policies. His aunt merely glanced at the list before losing control and shouting, "Damn it, you cannot do this. These are all our things, husband, say something. Hurry and think of a way. Without these assets, what will our family have left? I fear we will have to dismiss more than half the servants because we will no longer be able to support them." Slap. Gu Yudong too suddenly stood up and swung his hand, slapping his aunt so hard she fell from her seat to the ground. What are you shouting about? His uncle's face turned purple with anger and he spoke with ragged breaths. Ignorant woman. Clan rules are placed right here. Do you think you can refuse to return what must be returned? Ignorant stupid. His aunt covered her face with one hand and instantly woke from her dream. She collapsed weakly onto the ground and looked blankly at her husband. HMPH. Gu Yudong too snatched the list and flipped through it once while grinding his teeth. His eyes were filled with bloodshot lines, his breathing was rough like an ox, and he spoke with hatred. Return them. I will return every single one of these things, not a single item missing, however. The veins on his forehead jumped, the muscles on his face twisted, and his expression became sinister. Fang Yuan, I cannot stop the Internal Affairs Hall, but I can deal with you. Do not think everything will be fine just because you obtain the family property. HMPH. 3 days later, Fang Yuan walked out of the Internal Affairs Hall, holding a stack of house deeds, land deeds, and slave contracts. I did not expect this inheritance to be so generous. He was somewhat surprised. Although Fang Yuan had held not small expectations, after he truly obtained this inheritance, it still exceeded what he had imagined. More than 10 mu of farmland, 8 household servants, 3 bamboo buildings, and a wine tavern. No wonder Uncle went through so much trouble, thinking of every possible way to stop me. Fang Yuan now understood Gu Yudong 2's actions. With such a rich estate, even in a world like this, it was enough for one to live without worrying about food and clothing. More than 10 mua fields and 8 servants aside, the 3 bamboo buildings were real estate. Just collecting rent from them every month would already be enough to support Fang Yuan's current cultivation. In addition, there was also a wine tavern. One had to know that in the entire mountain stronghold, there were only 4 wine taverns. Such an estate, if placed on Earth, would be equivalent to owning several villas, a wine shop, and being a wealthy household capable of supporting servants. What was worth mentioning was that this world's living environment was extremely harsh. Survival itself was already difficult, and the mountain stronghold was the safest place, so housing prices were even more expensive than on Earth. I heard that 3 generations ago, my Fang family line had once produced an acting clan elder who left behind much wealth for his descendants. With this family property, forget 7 gu worms. Even if that number doubled, I could still afford to raise them. But the most important thing is not these assets, it is this grass gu. Asterisk grass gu, a plant-type gu worm. At that moment, a grass gu lay quietly in Fang Yuan's robes. It was delicate and small, its roots emerald green like ginseng roots. A few of its roots were semi-transparent, resembling Jade. 9 round leaves, green and lush, alternated around the roots, forming the shape of a circular tray. This was the rank 2 9-leaf vitality grass, a healing gu worm. If it only possessed ordinary healing ability, then there would not be much difference between it and breath of life grass. Its true value lay in the fact that every leaf plucked from it became a vitality leaf. Vitality leaf was also a type of grass gu, rank 1, belonging to the consumable type. It would vanish after 1 use. It also had one weakness. After using 1 vitality leaf for healing, using additional vitality leaves within the next hour would have no effect. However, its strengths far outweighed its weakness. It was easy to refine, healed quickly, and was easy to raise. It was one of the most popular healing methods among rank 2 gu masters. Each small team only had 1 healing gu master. Sometimes, when many team members were injured at once, how could a single healing gu master take care of everyone? And if the healing gu master was the first to die, or became separated from the team, what then? Therefore, gu masters often prepared some healing methods for themselves. Vitality leaf was one of the most basic and effective options. Basically, gu masters traveling outside would all prepare 1 or 2 leaves. After I refine the 9-leaf vitality grass, every leaf plucked from it will be a vitality leaf. By using primeval essence to pour into the vitality grass, I can make it grow and produce new leaves. It can be said that this 9-leaf vitality grass is a mobile gold mine, the most important inheritance of all. Possessing 9-leaf vitality grass meant possessing a business channel. The survival environment of this world was extremely harsh. How could gu masters go out to carry out missions without being injured? The demand for vitality leaves would continue without end. No wonder Gu Yudong 2 is called the Hidden Elder. Although he has retired for many years, he still has influence. So the reason comes from this 9-leaf vitality grass. Gu masters needed vitality leaves, and Gu Yudong 2 sold vitality leaves. This relationship allowed his uncle's influence to be maintained all along. Fang Yuan suddenly understood. It is also because, in this world, the value placed on clan kinship has been raised to a completely new height, restraining uncle and aunt. Otherwise, if this were Earth with benefits, this great Fang Zhang and I would have long since been assassinated by them. Not good. It seems there will still be trouble ahead. Uncle and aunt absolutely will not stop like this. However, I have now grown up and have rank 2 cultivation. If they want to deal with me, they must also pay attention to clan rules and will inevitably be restricted. HMPH. No matter what methods they use, let them come and try. When soldiers arrive, generals block them. When water comes, earth covers it, I will accept it all. Fang Yuan walked down the road, his eyes flashing with uncertain light. A winter wind blew over, coldly brushing past his face. From now until spring was still a long time. But Fang Yuan knew that he had already welcomed the spring of his life.